Tottenham remain intent on trying to help Ange Postecoglou rather than removing him from his position as manager at the moment. Then show us. What are we doing? What are Spurs doing? 20 days into this transfer window, and we've had one credible outfield player linked to the club, and that was Randell Kolo-Muani, and that's not happening. It seems that he's not going to Juventus either. We've signed a goalkeeper in Kinchki, who, yes, was a good signing, but what have we really done to address the injury situation that we find ourselves in, regardless of who is to blame for that, whether it's the lack of squad depth, whether it's Ange's training methods or style of play that is causing these injuries? If you are going to stand by this manager, which Spurs are clearly doing, and you can debate in the comments as to whether you think is the right thing or not, and I'm going to talk about that in this video. I'm going to give my stance on it. Spurs are doing nothing to show that they are actually helping him. They are doing absolutely nothing. Welcome back to the channel. We're going to have a chat about the Everton game in this video. We're going to chat about all things Tottenham and where Ange Postecoglou stands right now, whether we are approaching the end. I know it's obviously been confirmed that he's going to be staying on as manager for now, for the moment, for sure, but yesterday was a miserable day for so many reasons, not just the result, the manner of the performance, everything, absolutely everything. But make sure to get involved in the comments, make sure to like the video and subscribe if you are new. So, yeah, like I said, we're going to talk through the game, but we'll come back to that shortly. Tottenham remain intent on trying to help Ange Postecoglou rather than removing him from his position at the moment. That's what Alistair Gold said this morning on Football London. How many times have we heard that? We heard that in December. We heard that after the last game. We heard it after Tamworth. We heard it after the Arsenal game. We've heard it after every game that we've played recently. Newcastle as well. All of the defeats that we've had. Obviously, Tamworth, we won that game. But, you know, the way the morale felt in the camp after that, it kind of felt like we'd lost given the way that we embarrassed ourselves. We've heard the same things constantly from the club. We've heard this statement about 4 times in the last 2 weeks. But one thing we haven't seen in the last 2 weeks is any real movement in the transfer market. That is what is going to help Ange Postecoglou. That is what's going to help Ange Postecoglou in this situation. He's not to blame. He's not blameless, in any of this. Absolutely not blameless in any of this. Yesterday was a complete car crash. It was kamikaze football from Tottenham. We went to a back 3. The players didn't look like they knew what they were doing. The shape, you can see that's how we clearly set up. It didn't work. It absolutely didn't work. It felt like a last-minute kind of botched change because of the fact that we'd obviously lost Dominic Solanke so late into the prep for the game. Obviously, on Saturday, he went down in training with a knee injury. Ange Postecoglou said it's going to be a few weeks. Hopefully, it's not too serious. Obviously, we got the news on Saturday that people were saying it could be 6 or 8. It still could be that. We don't really know. But the players didn't look like they had any clue what was going on yesterday, as was kind of evident for the defending for the goals. It was pretty embarrassing from a Spurs perspective. No real organisation in that back line. Dragusin kind of stepping up. Gray letting Dominic Calvert-Lewin have too much space. He finishes it well, twists inside and out. The lack of conviction in front of goal as well in that first half from Sonny. But look at this, far too easy. Archie Gray stepping up from that right centre-back position and then leaving that space in behind. And Jai 1v1 against Radu Dragusin. And Dragusin doesn't really deal with it well, but he's exposed against a good 1v1 dribbler in Njai who would improve Tottenham right now. He absolutely would. And that comes back to the recruitment in terms of the fact that we haven't been able to replace that profile in someone like we might have lost, like a Wilson Odobert, who is going to come and take on a man like that. We don't have those options in our squad. We don't. He finishes it really well. Third goal, again, the lack of organisation in terms of the defending. Corner comes in, comes back out. Dragusin is the only one that's kind of really alive to the danger. Everyone coming back into the box, kind of statues, and it's unlucky for Gray, but it was a mess from Tottenham. It was an absolute mess, and I think Ange, maybe he panicked, and maybe that's why he wanted to change things. I don't know, but it didn't work. It didn't work, and obviously there have been people crying for Ange to change shape, change the system, be more pragmatic. Obviously, he went to a 3 yesterday. It just did not work. It really did not work. And he has to take accountability for that. And that's the thing with Ange throughout this whole time, is that, to be fair to him, he has taken responsibility and accountability for everything that has gone wrong. And if he comes out in the next few weeks, if things keep going wrong, with an explosive kind of rant in a press conference or something like that, and starts taking shots at the board, despite the fact that he has been patient. Yesterday, he said before the game, the club are working really hard to try and get bits over the line. It's not easy, all that kind of stuff. There are other clubs in this Premier League that are showing it's not hard, not that hard to do business in January. I think it's almost become a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy with this whole January is really hard to do business stuff. You know, if you really want the people that you want, you can go out and get them. This morning, again, this transfer window is driving me crazy. Manchester United in talks with Lecce over a potential deal for left-back Patrick Dorgu. Patrick Dorgu was a left-back that Spurs identified in the summer, who they wanted to bring in. He was on their shortlist, but we didn't do it, and now it looks like we're going to be beaten to him by Manchester United, who are in as bad a position as us. Potentially worse. They're above us in the table, but it's potentially worse. They're in an awful position because they've got a pretty much fully fit squad. We haven't got that. They sit 2 points above us. They're in, like I said, as bad a position as we are right now, but the results just don't quite necessarily reflect that. If they didn't have Amad Diallo bailing them out on Thursday, they would have lost that game to Southampton. They were absolutely dreadful. But if they beat us to the signing of Patrick Dorgu, all right, apparently they're asking for €40 million, which might be unrealistic, but Man United are apparently confident they can get a deal done for between 21 and £25 million. The Spurs let this one pass up when we know, when you look at the injuries that we've got and the fact that we've had to play Jed Spence out of position at left-back, a left-back is someone that we could really do with right now because we're having to use someone like a Sergio Reguilon, who is unavailable for our game on Thursday, obviously because he's not in the squad. Jed Spence is unavailable for our game on Thursday because he's not in the Europa League squad either. What that team is going to look like against Hoffenheim, I don't know. Patrick Dorgu is a player that I feel that we should be going after. Absolutely going after, if we really want him. That would help the manager. Obviously, he's a young player. Inexperienced, chucking him into the league. But if Spurs felt like he was ready enough to spend the money on him we didn't spend the money on him in the summer, but if he was a player that we identified, then what are we doing? What are we doing? And again, look, we might bring in a couple of players towards the end of the window. When we signed Dejan Kulusevski and Rodrigo Bentancur, we signed them fairly late on. But there's no signs of any sort of movement. And I know Lang likes to work in silence and all this kind of stuff. And I know things tend to come out of nowhere with Spurs a lot of the time in terms of the links, but it doesn't sound promising. All we keep hearing is the same stuff about Ange Postecoglou. They're trying to help him. They're hanging him out to dry is what they're doing, regardless of whether you think Ange is the right man or not. I think everybody can kind of come together and accept that he's being hung out to dry. Where do I stand on Ange? Look, I've been quite vocal in my support of Ange for a while. I'll be honest, I'm at the point now where if he does get sacked, I'm not necessarily going to be upset for him because I think the results speak for themselves. But is it fair? Do I want him to be sacked? No, I don't think I do. But if he does get sacked, then I don't think I can have many complaints necessarily. But is he being judged fairly at the moment, given the crisis that we are kind of dealing with in terms of the injuries? No. There is so much context to all of this. That lack of backing has kind of exposed this incredibly thin squad. And look, I get told about the summer all the time and how I was positive about it. I'll say it again until I'm blue in the face. I was positive about the players that we brought in, and I was positive about the fact that we got rid of all the deadwood players that were incapable of kind of playing the way that Ange wanted to, that were in the squad at the time. But did we leave ourselves short? Absolutely yes. And that is something that I said at the end of the window, and it's something I said towards the end of it when it didn't look like we were going to make any more business, because after we signed Solanke, we were still kind of told that there were more players to come, and other than Odebear, that just didn't happen. That didn't happen. We were looking at midfielders, looking at more defenders, and Ange said at the time, okay, well, I'm not going to bring anyone in that I don't think is the right fit. I'm not going to bring in someone for the sake of it. I get that. I 100% get that. But what Spurs need right now is bodies. And you can't tell me that there are players out there that aren't... you can't tell me that there are players out there that wouldn't be a good fit for Tottenham that we can bring in relatively quickly. I know we're 15th in the league, but we just don't pay the wages. We don't spend the money to do that. Obviously, we spend money. We have spent money. We do not pay the wages. That's what makes us an unattractive prospect. It's not necessarily the league position that makes us an unattractive prospect. Obviously, it doesn't help, but the lack of ambition shown by the club on and off the pitch as a result of the off-the-pitch, all the off-the-pitch stuff with Levy and ENIC, and the fact that their interests kind of sit far more outside of what actually happens on the pitch is what puts players off joining us. We had Prime Kane and Prime Son for such a long time, and I think they papered over the cracks. And I think where we are right now in the league, it's kind of where the owners deserve to be, right? And I've said this in a video that I did a few months ago talking about Ange before the Chelsea game. And I said that I was quite quiet in terms of how I spoke about the owners for a while. But that's because I'd rather kind of focus my content on the pitch stuff. But it gets to a point where You just absolutely cannot ignore that. And I've wanted Levy to move on for such a long time, and that doesn't mean that you can't acknowledge the good stuff that he has done, but the bad stuff that he has done in terms of showing that lack of ambition to further Tottenham as an on-the-pitch force when they've watched Aston Villa, Bournemouth, Brighton, Newcastle, Fulham, Brentford all kind of take over us this season. And look, does that reflect where Tottenham are going to be long-term behind these clubs? Not necessarily, but it could do. It absolutely could do. Are Spurs in a relegation battle? Right now, you'd say yes. We're 8 points off of safety. Or we're 8 points above the relegation zone at the moment. And look, that doesn't mean that we're definitely necessarily going to go down. But when you look at the players yesterday and that kind of the defending and the lack of fight that we've kind of seen over the last couple of games, do you believe in this group if we were to get dragged into it properly? Because I don't. Do I believe in the manager? I really want to. I really want to believe in Ange. But right now, when you look at the results, it's hard to see that light at the end of the tunnel. Now, people will downplay Tottenham's injuries, but they are massive. They are absolutely massive. Johnson out for 3 to 4 weeks. Forster, obviously, our backup goalkeeper at the moment, out. Yves Bissouma, out. Vicario, out. Romero, out. Udogie, out. Van der Ven, out. That's 3 out of your 4 out of your 5 starters from your main back line who have been out since... Well, Udogie's been out since December. Romero and Van der Ven have been out since early December. Vicario's been out since November. Bentancur out. Solanke out until March, potentially. Werner out. Odobert out. Look at that bench yesterday. Austin, Hardy, Olaseti, Yang, Reguilon, Ajayi, Lancashire, and Moore and Richarlison coming off the bench. Richarlison not fit enough to start the game. Comes on and obviously makes an impact and scores the goal. Mikey Moore comes on and makes an impact. And we'll talk about Mikey Moore shortly as one of those reasons to be a little bit more hopeful. But, no club in the Premier League is able to deal with those kind of injuries. And look, that's not an excuse. That is just the reality of the situation. They make a massive difference in terms of how we want to play and execute the game plan. And yes, results weren't perfect with Romero and Van der Ven in the side, but we were a lot more stable than we are now. And you talk about that stability. Adding instability to a very unstable situation by sacking the manager, is that the right thing to do? In my opinion, no. I think they've done the right thing by keeping Ange on in this moment in time and trying to give him the chance to turn it around. But like I said, they're constantly undermining that by not giving him any real backing in the transfer market, being 20 days into the window and no real sign of any sort of signings that are actually going to help him turn this situation around. And I think there is only so long where he can kind of be patient and almost be this puppet for the board in terms of coming out and saying that the club are working hard, all this kind of stuff. And I don't think Ange is the sort of manager to throw the board under the bus, but we can all see what's going on and he can see what's probably going on as well. It's not good enough. It's absolutely not good enough. You're undermining the statement that you are making by not giving him any real support. Now, back on the injuries for a second. Obviously, there's been a lot of chat about Andoni Iraola and who would you want the next manager to be if Ange Postecoglou gets sacked. There's been chat about Iraola, Terzic, Frank and Marco Silva. Now, Iraola is the most popular name that is kind of getting shouted by Spurs fans. And I get that. Look, Iraola I think is a good manager. I do think he's a good manager. However, a couple of things on this. His style relies quite a lot on chaos. Again, people talk about Ange's management of game state. Iraola, Bournemouth are kind of rarely settled in games. A lot of the time it's very transitional and they are as open as they are open defensively and quite attacking. Obviously, they've got very good defenders as well that are able to play the system that he wants, who would massively improve Tottenham right now. And Dean Huijsen, who is a player that we should have been looking at in the summer, and Zabarnyi, who is a name that has kind of been touted around as someone that we could potentially bring in to replace Romero. Both of them obviously improve Spurs right now, and I would kill for that kind of depth. Obviously, if you look at Bournemouth's injuries, people are saying, well, look at what Iraola is doing at Bournemouth with the hand that he's been dealt in terms of the injuries. You can't tell me that Ange can blame it all on the injuries. I get that, 100%. What Iraola has done has been magnificent with the injuries that he's got. Look at the players that they've got out as well, right? Hill, Adam Smith, Araujo, Senesi, Alex Scott, Unal, Evan Nilsson, both of their strikers out with a cruciate and a broken leg. Sinistera and Tavernier, obviously they've lost kind of a bit of attacking depth. And you look at that bench, all kids that I've never heard of. Well, some Bournemouth fans have probably never heard of Remy Reece-Dottin and Ben Winterburn, and obviously that's been a little bit sarcastic. They obviously would have. You know what I mean, though. Players that are just completely out of the ether of, who would normally be on their bench, so to speak. they've got more solutions in us than attack in terms of the versatility of players that they can actually use to play in that front line. In Ouattara, Kluivert can play as a striker, Semenyo can play as a striker. That's how they've kind of built their squad, right? Obviously, they've kind of prepared for these sort of injuries, I suppose. Obviously, that back line is still a very good back line. They've got their first choice goalkeeper in goal. Zabani, their first choice centre back. Huijsen, you could argue Senesi would probably be playing, maybe. But you could make that out to be a first choice back line outside of Lewis Cook doing a job at right back. Obviously, that is a problem. That is where they need Adam Smith kind of to come in, obviously, there. And forgive me, I feel like Adam Smith is their first choice right back. Anyway, Bournemouth's injuries are obviously comparable to Tottenham, but also a lot of them have happened quite recently. Whereas Tottenham, you look at how long these players have been out for, right? Dominic Solanke, obviously Solanke just injured, but Vicario mid-November, returned mid-Feb. So we're over a month away from him coming back. Doggy out for nearly the last month, not back until mid-Feb. Johnson recently, obviously, yes, not back until mid-Feb. Werner recently, yes, obviously not back until early Feb, mid-Feb. Bentancur again recently. But Romero, Van de Ven, the spine of kind of that back line have been out since the start of December, not back until next week, potentially. And again, are they going to be fully match fit? Davis out since the start of December, only just come back. Odobert out since November, no return date yet. Richarlison only just back. I don't necessarily think that Bournemouth and Spurs' injury situation is comparable. So this argument that Iraola would come in and be able to instantly improve us, I'm not sure that holds that much weight, although I think he's a very good manager. Absolutely, very tactically astute manager, all of those things, 100%. But Spurs have been dealing with this situation for a very long time, which again makes this kind of statement about helping the manager redundant, because despite the fact that the injury situation has got worse throughout the month, it was bad enough as it was going into January anyway. So what have we been doing for the last month? There should have been players that should have come through the door, like Kinski, in the first couple of weeks at the very latest. It's just not good enough from Tottenham. Not good enough, because it might get to the point with no return with Ange by the end of the month if we've lost to Hoffenheim and lost to Leicester, and then this might change again, and then that is where his position probably does become untenable. Like I said, I think he's getting things wrong, absolutely. I think his management of this situation could be better. I think he should be getting better results, even with the limited resources that he's got right now. But you're forcing him into a situation where it could get worse before it gets better, which is often the case in kind of these situations, right? They do often get worse before they get better. But they could get worse to a point where Spurs are teetering on the edge of the relegation zone and the morale of that group is completely bust. And then you make that change despite not really bringing any players in and all this kind of stuff, and you just add even more chaos to a situation that is just incredibly chaotic in itself. I don't know. It's an absolute mess right now. It is an absolute mess from Tottenham, and the board have to be held accountable for that. Ange has got to be held accountable for it as well. Absolutely, don't get me wrong. And my faith in Ange is dwindling. Of course it is. Look, I'm not saying I fully want him out. I think it is the right decision to keep him on at this moment in time. Do I believe right now that he is 100% the man that's going to turn this around? No, but I don't know what I can believe in at Spurs right now. I don't think there is really anything to believe in. So it's hard. It is really difficult. But I think they probably made the right decision by sticking with him. But like I said, I think they're undermining themselves by coming out and publicly backing him with these words, but not with any actions. It's just absolutely crazy. And again, you go back to the goal difference situation. We've scored 45 goals. We've scored more goals than basically every team in the top four other than Liverpool. We have scored more goals than any team in the top four other than Liverpool. Defensively, we're nowhere near good enough right now. When those players do come back, I think we will be better, and I think we can get to some sort of stability, but we're not going to achieve anything this season. I think the damage is already done in terms of trying to actually achieve anything meaningful. And then in the summer, those players that have kind of dragged us through these difficult times, your Kulusevskis and Romero and Van de Vens, when they do hopefully come back and make an impact, they're probably going to be looking at thinking, the board aren't showing any ambition, we're not going to stick around here, we're going to push for moves. And then Tottenham are probably going to be in a worse situation next year. Absolutely bonkers. Obviously, Mikey Moore gave us a little bit of hope yesterday with this cross and this cameo. Would you be starting him over Son on that left-hand side? Obviously, it's a lot of pressure on the kid, but the difference that he made yesterday. It's not the first time we've seen him put in this kind of quality of delivery from that left-hand side. It took me straight back to that Outmar game, these kind of crosses, the danger zones that he's putting that ball into, the bravery to take on a man. Jed Spence as well down that left-hand side. I thought they dovetailed nicely and made an impact. Other than that, and obviously Kulusevski, the quality in which he took his goal. I feel sorry for Gray. I feel sorry for Bergvall. Absolutely. Their performances weren't great yesterday. I thought the setup was wrong. He tried to change something. It didn't work. I don't know. It's a real mess right now. But, you know, there is hopefully eventual light at the end of the tunnel with some of these young kids who are clearly very talented. And there are players here that are clearly very talented. Ones that are in the team, ones that are currently sitting on the sub or the injury table. You know, that can absolutely help right now. But with the mentality of these players, some of them, I'm not sure they've got the stomach for what we might have to go through in the next few months, and it really does worry me. I am really worried, and I think we're in big trouble. But like I said, I think sticking with the manager for now is the right thing to do. But you've got to stop undermining him with this, and stop undermining yourselves by making statements like this, saying that saying that you're sticking by him, but not actually backing him. It's a real mess right now, absolute mess. I don't blame you, however you feel. If you are Angel, I 100% don't blame you. If you've had enough, I totally get you, 100%. I'm just coming at it from my point of view. I don't like this whole "I told you so" thing that's kind of going around with some people. Look, I know I was kind of bullish on Ange, maybe at the start of the season when there was a lot of people doubting him. I could see the positives in it. The underlying numbers were very good. I thought our performances didn't necessarily reflect the results that we're getting. I think that's changed now. I think we've been unlucky, definitely, in certain games. Newcastle, I think we should have got something out of that. I thought we were unlucky with the refereeing decisions. Yesterday, I think we should have had a penalty, absolutely. Obviously, the handball in the build-up to the goal, again, is a problem with the rules. I thought we should have had a penalty, absolutely, though. But it's not an excuse. It's not good enough. The performances aren't matching up to... they aren't matching up to any hope that we should necessarily be seeing. Whereas I think at the start of the season, that wasn't the case. And that's why I was quite bullish on Ange. And I can hold my hands up and say that I was probably a bit too, maybe... not even arrogant, but kind of wanting to throw it back in some of the people's faces that were doubting him, because there was so much toxicity and negativity around when there was a time to, I felt, be more positive, because I thought I could see the performances. I can't see the performances right now. I can't necessarily see how it gets better with the state that we are in right now. But I still don't like this whole kind of "I told you so" thing. We all want the same things, right? It's not our fault, people like me, that we kind of wanted to back a manager and believe in him, because Ange, I think, is the sort of manager that can do well at this football club. I think he plays the right kind of way. I think there have been times where defensively we've been all over the place and suicidal, but you know, you don't score 45 goals in a Premier League season at this point and score more than 4 out of the 5 teams in the top 4 if there isn't something there. It's just, it's a mixture of everything. We need players back. We need new players. And we need a total change at the top in terms of that ambition. I'm not sure we need a change of manager right now, but if you feel like that is the case, then I don't blame you. And I think if it did happen, I would be far more apathetic to it than I would have been maybe a few months ago. I would be so annoyed about kind of starting this cycle again, but I don't think you can argue in isolation that Ange's results are not good enough, and it is sackable form. But obviously you have to take into context all of the other factors that have contributed to this situation. It's a real mess. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. There'll be a podcast out later, Darren and Doing as well, which I'm sure is going to be obviously incredibly cathartic. Make sure to follow me on TikTok for more content as well, chatting about Spurs. Obviously, if you are a US viewer, I'm glad that TikTok has kind of been reinstated for the short term, obviously this 90-day period that Trump is talking about. So you will still be able to find me on there. But, you know, obviously if anything changes, then you can follow me on Instagram, where I might start posting more short form content. And of course, you can find me on here as well. And I appreciate all the messages that I've had over the last few days from my American viewers, kind of saying, where can we find you and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's going to get worse before it gets better. How worse it gets, we don't know. Are we coming to the end of Ange's reign? Potentially. The club needs to do more to back him. I think we can all agree on that, regardless of where you stand on Ange. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you later. Up the Spurs.